All right, good morning. Welcome to the 294th District Court. My name is Judge Chris Martin. This morning and afternoon docket is an evidentiary contested docket. As such, what I'm going to do in just a moment, I'm going to call the docket. I want you to say present or here, raise your hand so I can acknowledge you for the docket. After that, counsel, I'm going to ask for announcements on what you anticipate is going to happen on these cases. After we call the docket, then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Judge Thomas. He's going to preside in CR 15421, State versus Joshua Samuel Gamble. That will be the first matter of business. I will take up 2 probation extensions prior to that time. That will be short. Then I'm going to turn it over to Judge Thomas, and then he'll conduct that hearing. After that case is concluded, then I will resume here on the bench and take up the other cases. And then the afternoon is going to proceed the same way with Judge Thomas presiding over the case of Amy Louise Bird. So at this time, I'm going to call a docket. Don Robertson. Here. Charles Stewart. Here. Janet McGuire. Joshua Gamble.
With counsel, Judge.
Samuel Turner.
With counsel.
Christopher LaPoma. Here. All right, Mr. Robertson and Mr. Stewart, if you'll come on up for your probation extensions. This is in cause number CR 15280 and CR 18142. Y'all come right up here in the middle. It's fine. All right, who's Mr. Stewart? Good. All right. All right, so Mr. Robertson, Mr. Stewart, you're here before the court today on amendments to your conditions of community supervision. I see here that each one of you gentlemen are asking the court to allow you to have your probationary period extended for a period of 6 months, in which that period, the probation office is indicating to me that they would waive their probation fees and your analysis fees. Do both of you gentlemen agree to the extension of your community supervision?
Yes, sure.
And Mr. Robertson, tell me, why are you asking for your probation to be extended? So you have some so you got some financial obligations left?
Yes, sir.
What about you, Mr. Stewart?
Same.
And you gentlemen believe that if I extend it, you will be successful in finally paying off your financial obligations?
Yes, sir.
All right. And Mr. Robertson and Mr. Stewart, has anyone threatened, forced, or pressured you to make you feel like you had to have your probationary period extended?
No.
Each one of you gentlemen doing this of your own free will?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The court's going to approve the amendment to the conditions of community supervision, extending the period of probation for an additional 6 months in each case. Court will waive the probation and UA fees. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll have you step over here to Officer Burns.
If I pay it off early,
Sir,
if I pay it off early.
if you pay it off early, you come here, I'll shake your hand and you're free to go. All right, so go over here and see Ms. Burns, and she can give you more information about that. All right, let's see, Miss Chester, what's your announcement going to be on Ms. McGuire?
I just got an offer from the prosecution. I think it's going to be an agreement.
Okay.
Do it.
You're not anticipating a contested hearing today?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. And let's see here, Mr. Murray Leader, what about Mr. Turner?
Your Honor, I had filed a motion for continuance just yesterday. It's unopposed. We're asking for additional time to review the PSI and request records. And I would like to have at least one more witness that can speak about Mr. Turner's behalf. So we're urging that continuance, Your Honor.
And I saw in your motion here that you received the PSI about the same time I did, which was probably Tuesday morning.
That's correct, Judge.
And I believe that the code requires that PSIs be delivered to the defendant, the state, and the court at least 3 days, I believe, is what the code requires. Is that your recollection as well?
I don't know exactly, Your Honor, but I could look that up if you'd like.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead and grant the motion for continuance, and we will reschedule Mr. Turner until the next contested docket. That would be January 27th. That'd be at 9 a.m. And Mr. Turner, once you sign that notice of appearance, then I want you to check in with Mr. Waddell over here. Any concerns, Mr. Waddell? All right, Mr. Turner, just a moment. I want you to check in with Mr. Waddell, and then once he tells you you're free to go, you are. I do want to admonish you that you're still on community supervision. You're still required to comply with every term and condition of your community supervision. You understand that? Okay. And I believe right now you have an in-home alcohol monitoring device. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you do not have an interlock device, correct? You do not have an interlock device on any vehicles.
No.
And you do not have a driver's license. Right, but listen, you don't have a driver's license, right? Okay, so you do not need to be, if you're driving, that's going to be a violation of your conditions of community supervision. You understand? Now, I don't want you to respond. I want you to understand. If you're driving without a driver's license, then you are committing a violation of the laws of the state of Texas, which is another violation of your community supervision. Understand? And if you're going to have a vehicle, then you're going to have an interlock device. That way I can be assured that you're not driving under the influence of alcohol. So if I find out that you're driving without a license, find out that you're driving without an interlock device, it's going to be a problem. You understand?
Yes.
So you might want to talk to, but if any of those issues are occurring, you might want to disclose those to your attorney. And then I want you to go see Mr. Waddell, and then we're going to see you back on that date that I gave you and Mr. Murley on that form. All right? I set that 127, I believe. Mr. White, what's your announcement on Mr. LaPalma?
Your Honor, we received an offer. My client has some time to think back. State has no opposition. I believe we can get this resolved without us having.
Okay, you're asking for a reset today?
That's correct.
Ms. Curry, any objection by the state on Mr. White's request for a reset on the pretrial hearing for Mr. LaPalma?
No, Your Honor.
All right, so Mr. LaPalma has two cases, is that right? One DWI. All right, so what I'll do is, since there's no contested pretrial motions, I'm assuming on the DWI, is that right? All right, so we'll set that for docket call on January 27th. We will set the motion to adjudicate on the same date. January 27th. And Mr. LaPalma will check in with probation before he leaves. Where are you at, Mr. LaPalma? Check in with probation, sign this with Mr. White, check in with probation, and when they're done with you, you're free to go. Ms. Chester, you still need time?
Judge, we're working on the paperwork now.
Okay, all right, then I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Judge Thomas.
right, this court will call cause number CR 1500421, the state of Texas versus Joshua Samuel Gamel. Is the state ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
Mr. Mara Leader, is the defense ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, has the defendant been arraigned on this motion?
Judge, I've admonished him on this motion. I've given him a copy as well. We plan on entering a plea of true to the allegations in the motion to adjudicate / motion to revoke and proceed into evidence.
All right. Am I correct that this is a third-degree felony?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Gamel, you understand that if the court were to find true to any of the allegations, just one, the court could sentence you to not less than 2, no more than 10 years in the institution division, as well as a fine. I guess, is that up to 10,000?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to ask at this time that you may be seated. I'll ask that the state read the motion. I believe that it's been amended.
Yes, Judge. Does the court have?
Yes.
Judge, we can waive the reading of the motion. We've received the allegations and we're prepared to enter a plea of truth to all the allegations in there.
All right, thank you. All right, so as to count 1, Mr. Gamel, you plead true to count 1?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, count 2,
Yes, Your Honor.
plead true.
Yes, sir.
Count 3, do you plead true? Count 4,
Yes, Your Honor.
the court acknowledges your plea true. Count 5, do you plead true?
Yes, sir.
And then count 6.
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Gamel, it's my understanding that there's no plea agreement in this matter. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right. So are you pleading true because these allegations are in fact true?
Yes, sir.
Did anyone promise you anything or threaten you to get you to plead true?
No, Your Honor.
All right, this court is going to accept your pleas of truth to each of the 6 counts in the state's amended motion to adjudicate. All right, you may be seated. All right, is the state ready to proceed on punishment evidence? Or do you have any evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. We do have evidence on punishment. We have no further evidence other than the defendant's pleas of true with regard to guilt innocence.
All right, any evidence, Mr. Amara Leader, for the whether or not the court could find the allegations true?
No other evidence from us, Judge, and I will put on the record that the state has provided all the discovery in the case in compliance with my court.
All right. All right, the court is having accepted the defendant's plea of truth to each of the 6 counts. The court is going to find that each of those 6 counts are true and rule that they are true. Now, additional evidence from the state?
With regard to punishment, Judge?
Yes.
Yes, we would call Danielle Griffith.
And do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Sir.
All right, have a seat.
Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am. Would you state your name for our record, please?
Danielle Griffith,
And Ms. Griffith, how are you employed?
Bansac County Community Supervision,
All right. And what is your position there?
indirect technician.
And what does indirect technician mean?
I supervise all the transfer out of county cases.
So if an individual is put on probation in Bansac County, but that individual doesn't live in Bansac County, do they wind up on your caseload?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you, as part of your job duties, do you make arrangements then for them to be transferred to the county where they do live?
Yes, ma'am.
As a part of your duties, did you become familiar with or get assigned an individual named Joshua Gamble?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember when Joshua Gamble was put on probation here?
He was placed on probation September 12th of 2017.
And was he assigned to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Why was he assigned to you?
Because at the time he lived in Gregg County.
And when Mr. Gamble was placed on probation, that was for 2 counts. One, securing execution of a document by deception. And the second count, I believe, was theft. Is that correct?
He was just put on probation for theft of property.
Okay. All right. So then the theft of property case that he was put on probation for, was that a deferred probation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Deferred
And what was the term of that deferred?
for 5 years.
Did, when Mr. Gamble was placed on probation, did he come and meet with you?
Stephanie Clark, she's a probation officer in our department, and she actually did his intake on that date on September 12th of 2017.
So when someone is placed on probation in Bansac County, is it customary that they go to the probation office and meet with a probation officer, an intake officer that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And did Mr. Gamble do that?
Yes.
Okay. And that on that day, he met with Stephanie Clark. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you aware of what instructions he was given by Ms. Clark?
He was given 3 mail-in report forms and told to mail those in until he heard from Gregg County, who would contact him in regards to his transfer request to Gregg County.
And that was on September 12th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Of 2017.
Yes.
All right. Did he mail in those report forms?
No, ma'am.
On those report forms, does it ask various questions?
Yes.
Does it include a question as to whether or not your address, the probationer's address, is the same or has changed?
Yes, it does.
And is that a method for you to know as his probation officer that he's moved?
Yes.
Do you need to send him mail and keep in contact with him?
Yes.
So is it important for you to know that he moved?
Yes, ma'am.
So on that day, he's given 3 mail-in report forms. Why 3?
Because we cannot go longer than 90 days of seeing a person in a defendant in person.
Okay. So you're allowing him to mail in report for 3 months because he lives in another county. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And if the system works correctly, does he get set up in his other county in that time period?
Yes.
Does it sometimes take longer than that?
No, not usually. There have been occasions, but the defendant is told that if by the 3rd month, the beginning of the 3rd month, if they have not heard from the county that they are transferring to, they need to contact me so that I can check with the county they are transferring to check the status of the transfer in case the packet may have been lost in the mail, so that I can check the status of what is going on.
And in this case, he was given those 3 mail-in report forms on September 12th. Did you or your office ever receive any of those mail-in report forms?
No, ma'am.
And do you know whether or not Gregg County ever contacted Mr. Gamble?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
Now, when someone is transferring out, whose responsibility is it to notify the receiving county that there's a potential probationer in their county and get that process started?
The officer that does the transfer with the defendant, they will send the packet to the supervising county.
And so was a packet sent from here to Gregg County saying, hey, we want to transfer this guy to your county for your supervision?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know whether or not, do your records reflect whether or not Gregg County followed up on that and attempted to contact Mr. Gamble?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
Okay, and what efforts did they make?
They sent Mr. Gamble a letter for Mr. Gamble to contact them or contact Gregg County to set up an appointment for his intake with them.
And do your records reflect whether or not Mr. Gamble ever contacted Gregg County to set up that first appointment?
I received a rejection letter from Gregg County stating that on October 26th of 17, that his case was rejected from Gregg County because Mr. Gamble had made no contact with them.
And because of that, did you attempt to contact Mr. Gamble?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, tell us about your attempts to contact Mr. Gamble.
I had contacted Mr. Gamble and set him an appointment. The first appointment was for November 9th of 2017. And then I set him an appointment for November 14th of 2017. And he failed to report to both appointments.
Okay. Now, November 9th, how did you let Mr. Gamble know about that appointment?
I had sent him a letter.
To the address you had on file?
Yes, ma'am. The letter later was returned. I had also contacted him by phone. At the time, he did not have a voicemail set up on his phone, but I also sent him a text message.
And does the probation department have an automated system that sends out those text messages?
Yes, ma'am.
And does it reflect whether or not the text message is received?
So we do get on our system, it will tell us if it was rejected.
Okay. So according to the automated system, was that text message received?
Mr. Gamble did contact me the morning of his appointment on November 9th.
Okay.
And he contacted and left a voicemail on my machine at 7:25 a.m. stating that he did not know he had an appointment that day, but he did receive his text message the night before from our automated system for the reminder appointment. He wasn't able to get off work that day, but he was asking to reschedule his appointment. So I contacted him. I tried to contact him by phone. I wasn't able to reach him, and he did not have a voicemail set up. So I sent him a text message telling him I was rescheduling him for Tuesday, November 14th at 8 a.m.
All right. So he got the November 9th text because he contacted and left a voicemail the next morning.
Yes, ma'am.
And what time did he contacted you? I believe you said at 7:25. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what time did you call him back?
I think it was at 8:05.
Okay. And he didn't answer.
No, ma'am.
But you sent him another text that said, okay, I am rescheduling for you, doing you a favor for November 14th.
Yes, ma'am.
So on November 14th, did he show up?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did he contact you that day?
Yes, ma'am.
How did he contact you and what did he say that day?
He left a voicemail at 7:11 a.m. stating he had car trouble and would not be able to make it to the probation department. He didn't know what to do. He asked if he could reschedule. I tried to reach him again by phone. He didn't answer again. He did not have a voicemail set up. I tried to text him. I'm sorry, I did not try to text him. He
Okay,
did
so you
not
tried
have a
by-
voicemail set up.
Okay. So you tried to call again and still voicemail's not set up and he doesn't answer.
Yes, ma'am.
When you try to call a probationer, do you call from the regular number at the probation office?
Yes, ma'am.
So is that what shows up on someone's caller ID, the regular probation number?
Yes, our office number, but I believe it's linked to the courthouse.
Okay, yes, the regular court number.
Yes,
So it's not like it would be an unknown number showing up that he didn't answer
correct.
or a number he's never seen before.
Yes, ma'am.
So after that, on November 14th, when's the next time you hear from Mr. Gamble? Let me make it easier for you.
Okay.
Did you hear from him ever again in 2017,
No, ma'am.
2018,
No, ma'am.
2019,
No, ma'am.
2020?
No, ma'am.
So from that day forward, till he ultimately gets arrested, you never heard from Mr. Gamble again.
No, ma'am.
From that day forward until April of this year, did Mr. Gamble do one single thing he was supposed to do on probation?
No, ma'am.
You filed the original motion to adjudicate his deferred in 2018, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then after he was arrested this year, was that amended?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Judge, before I begin my cross, I would just like to ask the court to take judicial notice of the court's file and all of its contents. I believe the court already has the judgment, the order of deferred adjudication. If not, I can provide the court a copy of that.
All right, I have the conditions of probation, but didn't ask her. But this court will take note and take judicial notice of its entire file in this cause number, CR 15-00421.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
This is the order of deferred, Judge.
All right, thank you.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good morning, Ms. Griffith. How are you doing
Morning.
today?
Good. How are you?
My name is Shrav Muralidhar. I represent Mr. Gamble. Have we ever spoken before?
I don't think so.
Okay, so today's our first opportunity to talk, and I'm going to talk to you about a few of the things while he's been on probation with you. All right. He reported to you after his arrest in April. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And since his arrest, he's been reporting to you and taking you ways. Is that correct?
Yes.
How often has he reported with you?
Once a month.
So he's reported since April to today, once a month. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And he's tested negative for each and every one of his urinalyses.
Yes, sir.
Has he completed payment of his restitution?
He did pay it in full.
All right. We were set initially for a contested revocation a few months ago, and I had asked for a continuance for that, and then he came that very day to pay the complete restitution. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't remember the day, but yes.
Okay. I don't recall the day either, but it was the same day of that revocation hearing, correct?
Yes.
And how much was that restitution?
I believe it was $24,416.91.
And that was payable to the victim of Van ISD. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Has that money been transferred to them, and has the victim made whole?
From my knowledge, yes, it's been paid.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to hand to you what's been marked as defendant's exhibit number 9. Can you please just review that?
Yes,
Does that look familiar to you?
yes, sir.
And did Mr. Gamble complete that and provide that to you?
Yes, he did.
Consider the state, Your Honor, and for this into evidence as defendant exhibit 9.
No objection, Your Honor.
Defendant's number 9 is admitted into evidence.
Can you please tell us what that is?
It's a certificate for a life skills course.
And was that one of the conditions of probation that was required?
Yes,
Are there any other courses that are required as a condition of probation?
for Mr. Gamble's probation.
That's correct.
I don't have his actual conditions in front of me, but I think that's one of the violations alleged against him.
And he provided that completion certificate to you?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Can you please hand that to the judge?
Sure.
Ms. Griffith,
Yes, sir.
since he's been on, active probation with you since April, has he committed any violations of probation?
Not to my knowledge.
Has he been rude to you or rude to your staff at all?
No.
Has he been compliant and responsive?
Yes.
And he's the one who turned himself in to the jail upon for his arrest. Is that right?
Well, he was arrested in my office.
Okay, so he reported to you, and then you arrested him and took him to jail? Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. But he's the one who came to your office voluntarily, right? Nobody took him in handcuffs to your office?
No.
Right, so he walked in of his own free volition, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, he came in, we set an appointment and he came in.
That's right. So he didn't get marched in by a deputy sheriff.
No.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, yes.
All right. Can you tell the court what else he has completed on probation? Has he completed payment of fees?
Oh, just a second.
Please refer to your notes.
It looks like he has paid some to probation fees. He has a credit of $325 to probation fees.
So he has a credit right now. He doesn't have a balance, correct?
Oh, he has a balance.
He has a balance. How much is the balance that he has left?
His delinquent amount to probation fees are $2,735. And his UA fees, which is drug testing, is $255.
Okay, so roughly $2,500 in probation and UA fees. What else is due?
I'm not sure about his court fees.
Okay, so that may be due as well, the court costs.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but the full restitution that was paid, that is no longer owed, correct?
Correct.
Right. Has he done any community service while he's been on probation with you?
No, sir.
Has he turned in any kind of,
He has, if he's done it, he hasn't turned it in.
okay, but he has been given a probation community service form to complete, is that right?
Yes.
And did he relate to you where he was completing probation community service?
He has mentioned animal shelter. I gave him locations in Tyler and for Smith County, since that is where he's living. However, those hours have not been turned in.
Has he communicated to you that he is doing the community service for that?
He has stated that he is doing it, but again, they have not been turned in.
roughly how much community service was initially assigned to him as a condition of probation?
I don't have those conditions in front of me, so I'm not sure how much total, but he is required to do 10 hours a month.
10 hours a month? Okay. Ms. Griffith, I'm going to ask you a different set of questions. Can you talk to me about the sanction levels of probation? What is that, the sanction levels, and how is that enforced in your office?
If a person is violating their conditions of probation prior to COVID, we would place them in Sanctions Court. And they could get anywhere, it depended on the type of violation, anywhere from 3 days in jail to the judge could order on more community service, pay a certain amount of money by a certain, prior to the next Sanctions Court.
Okay, and has there been any assigned jail time in this case as a condition of probation?
No,
If a jail time was set as a condition of probation, has it been a common practice in the past for the jail to take people, say, on the weekends or Sunday, Monday, for example?
I have seen that before, yes.
Okay, and you've supervised people who have completed weekend duty probation in jail, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what happens if they are non-compliant with, their weekend duty of jail time as a condition of probation?
File a motion to revoke, turn it back over to the court.
Okay, and that would be a violation, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it could also be an additional crime of possible escape, right?
Yes.
Ms. Griffith, you told the court earlier on the state's direct that you were assigned this case initially back in September of 2017. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
In September of 2017, do you recall what the payment plan was for the restitution amount?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, but the full term of probation was 5 years deferred, and that ends in September of 2022. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And so normally your office would require a payment plan if they can't pay it up front to be completed by the end of probation. Is that right?
Yes.
And that restitution was made a full year prior to the end of probation. Is that right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
And that restitution was made a full year before the end of probation. Is that right?
Yes.
When you were initially assigned this probation, did you have any communication with Mr. Gamel's court-appointed defense attorney, Andrew Vaughn?
No, sir.
Has he had made any contacts with the probation office that you know of since the time that you've worked there?
I'm sorry, Mr. Gamble or Mr. Vaughn?
Mr. Vaughn?
Has Mr. Vaughn had contact with us?
Yes.
Probably. Like before Mr. Gamble? I'm sorry, I'm confused.
So has the prior defense attorney ever contacted your probation department? I'll make it specifically about Mr. Gamel's case. Has he ever contacted your probation department about Mr. Gamel's case?
Not to my knowledge.
All right, and you didn't have any kind of contact with him prior to being placed on probation and after being placed on probation?
No, sir.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm going to be handing to you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 10 and 11. Can you just take a moment to review that? And Ms. Griffith, I'm not going to ask you specific questions about
Okay,
the contents of that, the specific language of that. Just make yourself familiar with those documents.
okay.
My first judge.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to turn this state. I'm going to ask the court to take judicial notice of the fact that the prior attorney, Andrew Vaughn, has now been disbarred as a lawyer in the state of Texas. And exhibits 10 and 11, they were not produced by the witness that's already on the stand. These are documents that I printed out from the State Bar of Texas website regarding his disbarment and his suspension as well.
Your Honor, we'll stipulate that Andrew Vaughn is no longer a lawyer, that he was in fact disbarred, as long as defense counsel is willing to stipulate that it had nothing to do with Joshua Gamble's case, the reason for his disbarment. But these documents, Your Honor, can't be authenticated, certainly by this witness. They're not certified as official copies of the document. They're just internet printouts. I don't know. I don't believe there's a witness here to authenticate them today. So we object to the documents. We will stipulate that Andrew Vaughn was in fact disbarred, as long as defense counsel will stipulate that his disbarment had nothing to do with Joshua Gamble's case.
Judge, argument here that Mr. Vaughn was disbarred about Mr. Gamble's case. That's not my request in trying to admit this. I'm trying to show the court that Mr. Vaughn was serving partially probated suspension.
And Judge, I'm going to object to him reading that because this is not an official certified document that anyone can authenticate as true and correct.
Or maybe approach.
You may approach.
Judge, in order to admit these documents, we don't need to authenticate them. Like I mentioned, these are printouts right from the State Bar of Texas. And
If
I-
they were certified as such, you're right, they would be self-authenticating, but you
Let me
don't have
finish.
anybody to say.
Let me finish. So Judge, I don't need to authenticate these, all right? The court can take judicial notice of this. And I, as an officer in the court, can tell the court that I didn't alter these documents. I printed this straight from the State Bar Texas website.
And what hearsay exception does that make them fall
And
under?
let me finish. And Judge, what you can do is you can yourself look up as a fact finder in the court exactly when he was put on suspension and when he was disbarred. That doesn't require any further documentation from me. That could be taken by full judicial notice from the court itself.
Are these public records?
These are public records. That's correct.
They're not certified as such, Your Honor. Just because it's available on the internet doesn't make it a
Well,
public
you're-
record.
You're absolutely right. You could go to weight of the evidence. But if it's printed from the bar side, I'm gonna look at it. So you're offering those not for actually the truth. but
Right.
The fact that they exist.
The fact that they exist and to show the court that he was on partially probated suspension prior to the plea date of this actual case.
And so our next objection, Your Honor, would be relevance.
Well, I agree with you, that may not be relevant, but I'm going to, for purposes of this hearing, it's for the court, I'm going to acknowledge your position, Counselor, but I'm going to admit those for purposes of this hearing. That's defendants number 10 and defendants number 11.
That's correct. Judge, may I publish the court?
Sure.
Ms. Griffith, I'm just going to ask you a couple questions on that. Based on the admitted documents here, Mr. Vaughn was disbarred shortly after this case existed. Is that correct? As far as you know. I'd like to take a look at,
I'm going to
Okay.
object to that question. She shouldn't have any reason to know that.
yes, Judge.
I admitted those and I can look at it myself.
Yes, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Right. Additional questions for this witness?
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Griffith, is it unusual? Well, let me ask it the other way because there would be too many negatives that way. Normal course of business. Do you usually have contact with a defense lawyer in a probation case or not usually have contact with a?
Not usually.
So it's unusual for you to have contact.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, let's talk about the day that Mr. Gamble was arrested in your office. What date was that?
April 30th of
April 30th
2021.
This year.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is that the first contact you had with him since he was placed on probation in September of 2017? Other than the voicemails he left you?
First physical contact, like seeing him, yes.
And prior to that visit in your office, well, let me back up. On April 30th, was that the first appointment you had made with him in April of this year?
I had tried to make contact with him earlier in April.
And did you in fact make an appointment for him earlier in April on the 28th or so?
I did, and he missed it.
Okay, he didn't show up for that one.
No, ma'am.
All right. So then on April 30th of this year, he did show up.
Yes.
Prior to that, did he have any questions for you?
He kept asking if he was going to be arrested when we spoke on the phone.
Did you ever answer that question for him?
No, ma'am.
So did you know that he was going to be arrested that day?
Yes, ma'am.
But you had never given him that information.
I told him he needed to come in and figure out his case and get his probation back on track.
Now, defense counsel also asked you about Sanctions Court. And in the past, is it true that Bansac County has had an active Sanctions Court?
Yes, ma'am, prior to COVID.
And what was the purpose of Sanctions Court?
To try and help people get their case back on track before a motion to revoke is filed.
And in this case, Mr. Gamble was placed on probation in September of 2017, and the motion to adjudicate was not filed until July of 2018. Is that what you testified to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So during that period of time, if Mr. Gamble had reported, is it possible he would have been put on in Sanctions Court?
Yes, ma'am.
In 2017, 2018, was Sanctions Court very active here?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? And you told us that Sanctions Court is to try to get probationers back on track. If they aren't reporting at all, can they come to Sanctions Court?
No, ma'am.
If they aren't reporting at all, can you help them?
No, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Just a few questions, Judge. Ms. Griffith, during the time that he's been reporting with you, did you learn of any prior offenses that he allegedly may have committed during the time that he has not been reporting?
No, sir.
So there's no other crimes that you know of, correct?
No, sir.
Has he been honest with you and reported every single time that you've requested him to report?
We have rescheduled his appointment due to his work schedule a couple times, but he has reported.
Okay, where does he currently work?
A mattress store.
Do you know where?
I'd have to look at our system. I have it in the system.
And he's been working there, how long would you say?
He just changed to this new mattress store a couple months ago.
No further questions, Judge.
Nothing for you, Ron.
All right, ma'am, you may step down.
Thank you.
All right, does the state have an additional, any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor, we call Chris Martin.
You're an officer of the court, I feel right.
Please do.
Sir, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I so swear.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, maybe approach.
Yes, you may approach. I'm sorry.
Judge, I'm going to be objecting to this witness being able to testify here. We received no list of witness listing Mr. Martin as a potential witness in this hearing, and he wasn't included in the discovery as any kind of a witness for the state.
All right, what is the purpose of this testimony?
Many purposes, Your Honor. One, to establish the underlying offense. Two, to testify concerning some communications he had with the defendant, both during the original proceeding and since the original proceeding. He was communications concerning the defendant's compliance with probation, communications concerning the defendant ultimately leading to the defendant turning himself in.
Judge, none of those are part of the court's record or the court's file. And Mr. Martin cannot be testifying about facts that are not in the record or facts that he doesn't know.
He knows about the
Let me-
communication.
He doesn't have any knowledge about the actual offense. He was not a witness in that case. I'm going to object to any kind of questions regarding that.
Well, I have a copy of the original stipulation of evidence, which discusses that was in the original file. I've already taken notice of that. That's before the court.
Right, Your Honor,
Stipulation of evidence.
but if the state is going to ask him questions about the actual offense, he was not a witness to that.
Okay, the state is going to, during the pendency of that case, Mr. Gamble communicated in writing directly with Mr. Martin. Those emails are part of the DA's file that the defense has had access to. Additionally, this is a revocation. The same rules of discovery don't apply at a revocation as would apply in an underlying case. Secondly, during the period of time that Mr. Gamble was absconding from probation, Mr. Martin and Mr. Gamble had phone conversations. He is going to testify concerning those. There's no requirement that I give a witness list for punishment witnesses. He is a punishment witness.
Right, here's what I'm going to do. I have admitted already that I've taken notice of the entire file that has a stipulation of evidence concerning the offense. So I don't see any reason for the judge to testify about that, but any communications he's had with the defendant, I'm going to allow that to come in.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, I'm gonna guess our court reporter knows how to spell your name, but would you go ahead and state it for the record?
My name is Christopher Martin. I go by Chris.
And you are currently the judge of this court, the 294th District Court, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to being, and you recused yourself from this particular matter pending in the court, is that correct?
That is correct.
Prior to being the judge in this court, what was your position?
I was the elected criminal district attorney here in Bansac County from January 1st of 2011 until December 31st, 2018.
During the course of your service as criminal district attorney, did you become familiar with a defendant named Joshua Gamble and the case or cases involving him?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And ultimately, did you make the decision to enter into a plea agreement with Mr. Gamble?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was for the deferred probation we've heard about today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
During the course of the pendency of that allegation against Mr. Gamble and before the plea, did Mr. Gamble reach out to you directly and have conversations or attempt to have conversations with you?
He did.
All right. And what form was that in?
Unsolicited emails from Mr. Gamble to my official county email address at the DA's office.
Okay. And I'd like to start and talk about those emails a bit if we could. Do you have a copy of them there in front of you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So I'm going to show you what I have marked as, I'll start them with State's Exhibit 2 because I believe there's already a State's Exhibit 1 in the file. What I have marked as State's Exhibit 2, 3, and 4, and just ask you to take a look at those, please, sir. Yes, sir. No, not a bit. In fact, it may be easier. Yes, let me get one for the court judge so that if they are admitting.
I don't need one, I'll get you a read.
Okay,
I don't need it, but I want, as a defense counsel, to have comments.
all right, Mr. Martin, I've handed you those originals that are marked 2, 3, and 4. Do you recognize those documents?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And do those appear to be true and accurate copies of the emails that you received when you were the Van Zandt County Criminal District Attorney from Mr. Joshua Gamble?
Yes, ma'am, they do.
And we have now provided a copy to defense counsel of each of these, Judge. So
All right,
we're going
thank
to,
you.
so we're going to move for admission of 2, 3, and 4.
Judge, we're going to object. We feel that this is just hearsay without any exception. They're not part of the court's record. They're not public record. They were sent from an email address to Judge Martin's or then District Attorney Martin's email address. And Mr. Martin can I call you Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I'm getting confused with the judges. Mr. Martin can testify about the communications, and he can use this to refresh his recollection if he wishes to. But the best evidence is right there on the stand. We don't need to have hearsay be admitted.
Well, I consider this the same as the other internet records I've received. That he received those on his email, and they say they were from Joshua Gamel. And so that goes to the weight. To me, it goes to the weight, not the admissibility. I'm going to admit, what are the numbers, please?
2, 3, and 4, Your Honor.
All right.
And I too am calling you Mr. Martin for this.
Absolutely, please do.
So, sir, can you explain the policy or procedure that you undertook when you were DA, when you would receive a communication like this, either from a defendant or from a civilian, and but it was related to a case?
The policy that I had in place at the DA's office was anytime communication relevant to a case was provided, that information would be forwarded to a legal assistant or someone of that nature who was then instructed to take that document, if it was a document, and have it scanned into the discovery system there at the DA's office, where we maintain the other discovery related to the investigation. If it was not a document, it was just a conversation, then the policy was to record that in our own words, and then ensure that that's put into a document form, or at least typed into the discovery portion of the case management system, so that all prosecutors, victims assistance coordinators, anyone accessing the case would have the same knowledge.
And so at the beginning of these documents that have been admitted as 2, 3, and 4, we see some Robin or Bree, please print and scan, title it this. Explain that part of these documents.
Yes, so as these emails were being sent directly to my work email, as I received these, I knew that they were relevant to Mr. Gamel's case. And so I forwarded them in compliance with my own policy. I forwarded them to Ms. Robin Sherwood, who was the victim's assistance coordinator at one time. And then also sent it to Bree or Brittany Pearson, who was a felony legal assistant, which would be their duty to scan those in and place them in the discovery.
Now then, moving on to the actual body of these emails, what email address do they appear to be from?
In each email that I received, it was sent from identifiers Josh Gamel at jgamel, Gamel 24 at yahoo.com.
And whoever they are from, would it be fair to say that person has knowledge of the nature of the case or the offense against Mr. Gamel?
A lot of knowledge.
So they're lengthy. I'm not going to read them, just maybe highlight a few things here. Can you tell us the date and time that the first email shows to be sent?
February 27th, 2016 at 8:34 p.m.
And in that first email, the second paragraph there appears to start with "all I want to do." Could you read those 2 lines there and ending at the top of the next page, where the first sentence ends?
Yes, ma'am. All I want to do is make things right. I want to proceed in life, have a family, get a job. I promise you, if there was a lesson to be learned from all of this, spending 8 days in jail definitely taught that lesson. I couldn't do that again. I don't want to let my friends and little family I have left to become even more disappointed in me to the point where, oh, which I assume would mean to be don't exist to them. Is that where you wanted me to end?
Yes, sir. And then line 4 at the top of the second page, beginning with but.
But I can assure you, I don't have a criminal mind. I truly believe I'm a good guy, just with some bad baggage growing up that led into my adult life. I told one lie that snowballed into something I couldn't figure out how to make right.
And then skipping down, there's a sentence that starts with I recently, maybe about 8 or 10 lines down.
I recently found out I have 2 sisters I never know about, parentheses, long story short, I never knew my real mom, and they, referring to the sisters, live a similar childhood that I had to endure, and I desperately want to move to Austin to help them have a better life and give them someone to lean on.
And then lastly, in this email, about 5 lines up from the bottom in the middle of the page, beginning with I understand.
I understand you work in the justice system, but as I said, I truly believe I've learned my lesson. I just want my family and friends back, most importantly, and you have no idea how much I'll do for that.
Mr. Gamble do anything to get his family and friends back on probation?
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of personal knowledge.
I'll withdraw the question, Judge. The second email, Mr. Martin, when did you receive that one?
February 29th, 2016 at 4:42 a.m.
And could you begin with that second paragraph right there? I understand.
I understand at some point and in every case, justice must be served. It is a punishment to those who did wrong so that they may learn their lesson and hopefully strive to never commit those same mistakes.
And does this email, can you describe the rest of the contents of this email for us?
There's a lot of content, but
Okay.
I would say that the theme or the gist that Mr. Gamble is trying to convey to me is that he wants me to believe that he's a good guy. He wants me to get to know him. So he's giving me information about his life, trying to convince me that he's learned his lesson, that he would never do it again. It was a mistake. He's scared. He wants his life back.
Does he talk to you in these emails about the possibility of going to jail, knowing that probation is a possible outcome for him?
I'm not certain without reading this line for
Okay.
line. I don't.
It's admitted into evidence, and before I can make a decision, I'm gonna have to read it.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. And finally, Mr. Martin, you received a third email from him. When did you receive that?
April 10th, 2017 at 5:13 a.m.
And would you characterize the theme of that one the same or different from the other two?
I would I would say it's substantially the same with additions of his concerns about the legal system and dealing with attorneys and police and judges. He really hadn't touched on that a whole lot before. It's more about trying to convince me that he was not a criminal and that he'd made a mistake and that he wanted to make it right and how he wanted to restore his life. In this one, it seems to me, it seemed to me at that time, and again today as I read it, that perhaps some reality is starting to set in and he's starting to realize the situation that he's found himself in.
In that letter, that third letter, does he describe his intelligence level?
He does.
And what does he say?
He says he has a very, or he's not a very, he says, I have a high IQ.
Just a moment, Judge. And in that last letter, finally, Mr. Martin, on my copy, it's the top of the second page. Would you start with where it says my charge and end with the word obviously
And you indicated top of second page.
of the final email? Yes, sir.
What paragraph?
I'm sorry, first paragraph, second line,
And end where?
obviously.
My charge is theft of property, to be blunt. Although I didn't physically steal anything, rob a convenience store, etc., I did partake in something that would be considered frowned upon and perhaps illegal, parentheses, obviously.
So even at this point, he is describing his offense as something that would be frowned upon and perhaps illegal. Fair to say?
I believe that's fair to say.
At some point in time, Mr. Martin, did you become, or was Mr. Gamble brought to your attention again in this year, 2021?
Yes, he was.
And how did that happen?
I received a text communication from Superintendent Don Dunn with Van ISD.
And the subject matter of that communication, was it Mr. Gamble?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay.
All right, I agree that conversation is going to be hearsay if the defendant wasn't present.
Yes, Your Honor, and I wasn't going to ask Mr. Martin to repeat anything that was said, just whether or not that was the subject matter, and it brought Mr. Gamble back to his attention.
The subject matter is also hearsay, Judge. How he would learn about what the subject matter is based on what that text message was. That's still hearsay.
Well, the fact that Judge Martin talked to the superintendent while he was the district attorney, I don't think I'm not going to admit it.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I'll move on. After receiving that text message, did you then look into Mr. Gamble's status on probation?
I did.
And what did you discover?
I discovered that Mr. Gamble had a pending warrant for a motion to adjudicate.
And based on that discovery, then did you then take action to assist in getting Mr. Gamble in custody?
I did.
And can you tell us what you first did?
Upon having this brought to my attention by Mr. Dunn, I then contacted the Bansac County Community Supervision and Corrections Department. Do not recall if I spoke solely with Ms. Danielle Griffin, but I may have also spoken with Director Karen Burns. I can't recall which, but I do know that I had conversations with Ms. Griffin.
And based on those conversations, did you learn what we're here about today, that Mr. Gamble had essentially never shown up for probation?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Judge, at this point, Mr. Martin is the sitting district judge. Those are his records. The probation department records are in fact his records that he reviewed in order to come to that conclusion.
Judge,
It happened in April of this year.
we've stipulated I've asked for judicial notice to be taken of all the court's files. The court has the ability to do that. But what she's asking for Mr. Martin to ask about is what Daniel Griffith said to him. That's hearsay, Judge, and that's my objection.
It's an official court record of his court that he is the sitting judge of.
You can review the document with the sitting judge now, but what you're asking is what Daniel Griffith said to him.
All right, I don't mind admitting the record. I've admitted the records in the court's file, and I could even, because they're the court's records, I could admit the probation record, but
I'll
I'm not
move on,
gonna get
Judge.
into the conversations.
I'll move on. So as a result of what you learned in the probation records, did you then attempt to make contact with Mr. Gamble?
I did.
And how did you do that?
Wait just a moment. I became aware that Mr. Gamble had a presence on social media, specifically Facebook. And so I accessed his Facebook page, found that he had reported his place of employment as the mattress firm in Tyler. And I picked up the phone and I started calling all of the mattress firms in Tyler looking for him.
And do you recall about when this was?
Yes, I do. This was on April 7th of 2021 in the afternoon.
And by calling the mattress firms in Tyler, were you ultimately able to locate Mr. Gamble?
I was.
And did you have a conversation with him?
I did.
Can you tell us what he told you?
Upon speaking with Mr. Gamble, I called a specific mattress firm store. He answered the phone, identified himself as Josh. I did not know if that was Mr. Gamble or not because I had never had any personal conversations with Mr. Gamble. I inquired if he was Josh Gamble. He indicated that he was. Understanding that he was a wanted person, understanding that he was still under criminal prosecution, that he had rights, indicated to him that who I was, asked him if he remembered me, and then I assured him that he did remember me. He said that he did. I told him not to say anything, but to retrieve a pen and paper and write down what I was about to tell him. And I told him who his probation officer was and gave him her name, her number, and told him that he needed to contact her immediately upon getting off the phone with me, and that he needed to report, and that if he did not, then I would assure him that I would have him arrested in the mattress firm.
Did he respond to you in any way?
Well, he said he understood, and he said that he would follow my instructions, and we hung up, and he immediately texted me that he attempted to comply with my instructions, was not able to reach Miss Griffin, but would speak with her as soon as possible in the morning.
And your conversation with him, was it during work hours? Was it 8 to 5 during probation hours?
Yes, I believe it was probably between 4:30 and 5.
Is that the last conversation that you personally had with Mr. Gamble?
Yes, it was.
While this case was originally pending before he was placed on probation, was he given any opportunity to avoid prosecution?
Objection, Your Honor.
I don't see the relevance either. I'm going to overrule that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Overrule or sustain?
Oh, I'm sorry. He started to make an objection and I interrupted him, but I'm not going to allow that.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Judge, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Morning, Judge Martin.
This is the second time you've had a judge on the stand, I think this month.
I know, I'm making
In a good reputation.
what are these documents that you handed to me, Judge Martin?
I thought you wanted to see the records that I had.
Oh, no. Your Honor, may I have Defendant's Exhibit 10 and 11, please?
10 and 11.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Judge, Mr. Martin, did Andrew Vaughn ever contact you or tell the court that he was suspended or on partially probated suspension?
When?
Throughout your time as a DA?
Oh, when I was DA?
Correct.
I don't believe I was put on notice of his disbarment, or I'm sorry, of his probation status by him when I was in the DA's office.
And as a judge, you know that that needs to be reported not only to the court, but also to any state agency that he's dealing with, correct?
Opposing count, not just state agencies, but opposing counsel as well, yes.
So he was supposed to disclose that to you, correct?
He was. I mean, I was aware of it, but he didn't make me aware of it.
He didn't make you aware of it. When did you become the district attorney of Bansac County?
January 1st, 2011.
And when did you become elected as the 294th District Court Judge?
January 1st, 2019.
19, okay. So this plea happened while you were the district attorney, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Have you reviewed the transcript of that plea hearing?
The reporter's record, the transcript?
Correct.
No.
You were not the attorney of record when Mr. Gamble made that plea, correct? In court itself.
No, I believe Mr. Jonathan Manning, my assistant criminal district attorney was. But throughout the entire case, I was the lead prosecutor.
Throughout your time as the lead prosecutor for this case, did Andrew Vaughn ever write lengthy emails to you advocating on his client's behalf?
Objection, relevance.
Yeah, I don't see the relevance of that, counsel.
I'll move on, Judge. When you started calling the mattress stores and contacted Mr. Gamble, were you a sitting judge at the time?
Yes.
And you called him during work hours as a sitting judge, correct?
Did I call him as a sitting judge? I was a sitting judge. I was at home when I called him. I wasn't in my official capacity here in this courthouse.
Okay, I guess that's confusing what I just asked. But you were a judge when you were calling him, correct?
Yes.
And why didn't you just contact the sheriff's office? Why did you take it upon yourself to call Mr. Gamble?
Wanting to give Mr. Gamble an opportunity to do the right thing and turn himself in rather than have him arrested at his workplace.
Why were you giving him legal advice about when he could be arrested and his rights, when he could just contact the sheriff's office or contact probation department?
I didn't advise him of his legal rights. I said I was aware that he had rights, and I immediately told him, don't say anything due to my awareness. I didn't advise him that anything he say could be used against him in a court of law or anything of that nature. I was aware of his rights and told him, you don't respond, you just listen to what I have to tell you.
Why were you threatening him to be arrested?
It's letting him know that if he did not turn himself in, then he was going to get arrested there in the mattress firm.
Is it common for a judge to be calling an individual who's on probation in his court? Is that common?
Objection, relevance.
Yeah, I don't know what's common. I'm going to sustain that objection.
Do you think that what you did was appropriate, Judge Martin?
Objection, relevance.
Judge, he went into the conversations about how he spoke to my client, told him that he could be arrested. I'm asking him whether he thinks that's appropriate.
Well, it doesn't, I don't think that's relevant either, his opinion. There was an outstanding warrant at the time, was there not?
There was,
All right.
but you didn't refer the sheriff's office to go arrest Mr. Gamble. Is that right?
No, I put the ball in Mr. Gamble's court.
But you could have asked the sheriff's office to go arrest him, correct?
I could ask any number of agencies, yes.
And you were aware of the active warrant, is that right?
Upon my communication with the Bansac County Community Supervision and Corrections Department, yes.
No further questions, Judge.
Thank you, Your Honor. In fact, if you had called the Tyler Police Department, Mr. Gamble probably could have been arrested within 2 or 3 minutes of him answering that phone call with you. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
But he had begged you and told you what a good person he is and how he just wants this behind him in all these emails. So you gave him that chance.
Did.
Do you think you did anything inappropriate that day?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah,
Also
I'm not gonna
speculation.
get into that.
You gave Mr. Gamble exactly what he asked for, a chance to try to make it right.
Gave him the same opportunities I extended to other offenders that were on Sanctions Courts, where I meet with them one-on-one in this courtroom. And we go over their progress. We talk about if they don't do what they're supposed to do, that they can end up arrested, that they will go to jail, that they will lose rights. We talk about those things. We give them sanctions to try to put them on the right track, as Officer Griffin had testified to. I extended him all of those same things that I did every other offender on the 294th Sanctions Court program. Didn't treat him any differently than anyone else that I thought may do the right thing. And I also was aware that Van ISD had not been paid, and it was about restitution and trying to, repay the taxpayers of that school district.
Thank you, sir. I'll pass the witness, Judge.
No further questions, Judge.
All right, Judge, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Stay rest at this time, Your Honor.
All right, this is, we've been going an hour and 15 minutes. We're gonna take a 10-minute recess this time. This court's in recess. All rise.
strange.
Please be seated. All right, the state has arrested Mr. Murray.
Your Honor, may I make a brief opening for our portion?
Yes.
Judge, you're going to hear from 3 witnesses who are family members of my client. You're going to first hear from Ms. Shelley Hawk, who is the mother-in-law of my client. You're next going to hear from Mr. Kevin Sheehan. He is the grandfather-in-law of my client. He was the one who's going to testify about how the restitution was paid. And lastly, you're going to hear from my client's wife, Dakota Gamble. She recently married him just this year. At the end of that, Your Honor, we're going to ask for you to keep him on deferred. Defense calls Ms. Shelley Hawk.
All right, ma'am, I need you to raise your right hand and take an oath. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Good morning, ma'am. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Shelley Lynn Hawk.
And what is your occupation, Ms. Hawk?
I'm a registered nurse,
How long have you worked as a registered nurse?
right at 20 years.
Where do you currently work?
I work for United Healthcare. I work with Medicaid disabled children.
What is your relationship to Joshua?
He's my son-in-law.
He's your son-in-law?
Yes, sir.
That makes Dakota your daughter, is that right?
Yes, sir.
How long have you known Joshua?
About 3.5, 4 years, somewhere around there. I don't remember an exact date, but somewhere around in there.
How did you meet Joshua?
Dakota called me one day and said, "Hey, Mom, I want you to meet Josh." And so we cooked dinner and he came to the house and we had dinner.
May I approach the witness, Ron?
Yes.
Ms. Hawk, I'm going to be handing you what's been labeled as Defense Exhibit 1 to 8. Would you please just review those?
Counselor, you still have 10 in them.
Oh, I think they're right here. Ms. Hawk, are these just pictures of your family and Joshua?
Yes, sir.
Have these been altered in any way that you know of?
No, sir.
Are there a fair and accurate depiction of the pictures that were taken of Joshua and your family?
Yes, sir.
Would a defendant be to state the judge has to be effective? May I publish?
Tell me the numbers, please.
It's 1 to 8, Your Honor.
All right, defense exhibits 1 through 8 are admitted.
Publish the report. Those pictures that I sent you yesterday, those are the pictures that we admitted just now. Are those pictures of Joshua and his family?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell me, about his family a little bit? When they got married, what dogs they have, where they live?
They have 2 my grandpups, a cat. They live in Tyler. I'm sorry, what else did you ask, Mr. Merlater?
Who is his wife? When did they get married?
His wife is my oldest daughter. They got married on June the 1st of this year.
How long had they been previously engaged before that?
Oh gosh, they were engaged for a while. She wanted to finish college before they got married. So
Those pictures are of also your extended family. Is Mr. Sheehan also in there?
Yes, sir, that's my dad.
That's your dad, correct? Okay. I'm gonna go over those pictures in detail with Dakota later, but would you say that Joshua has family support now? And can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. When Josh and Dakota met, he verbalized, as did Mr. Martin, that he didn't have any.
Can you speak up, ma'am?
Oh,
or
I'm sorry.
Speak into the mic a little bit louder.
I'm sorry.
That's
Is that
fine.
better?
I know that you're nervous. You've never testified before, right?
No, I have not.
Okay, so take a deep breath, scoot up to the mic a little bit if you can. There you go.
Better.
Make it, speak loudly for the court
Okay.
reporter.
Okay, can you repeat that question?
So we were talking about family support for Joshua. Can you explain how that is now?
Yes, sir. Whenever Dakota and Josh first started dating, of course, my question as a mom was, what's his family like? That's important because obviously when you get in a relationship with somebody, those families merge. She, voiced that Josh really doesn't have.
Objection, hearsay.
I'll withdraw the question again. So, Ms. Hawk, without going into what anybody else has said, can you talk about how you personally know that Joshua has family support now?
Right now, Joshua has us. He did. Sorry. You ready? Josh has a family support that he has not had in the past. We are a very close, tight-knit family. My parents, my husband, my grandmother, we're all very close, and we're all very 100% supportive of each other and our lives and making our lives a positive experience.
When you first met Josh, did he have any times where he was homeless or jobless?
Not that I'm aware of. When they first met, he was actually working there in Longview, living in the apartment there behind an oil change place. He did end up, a few months later moving to Tyler because of the travel.
Tell me about a time when you believe Joshua showed his character to you.
Josh called me one day and he said, "Hey, I have a problem." And I was like, "What?"
Objection, hearsay.
Let's not go into what was specifically
Okay.
said, but what you know.
Josh had a friend that did not have the ability to furnish purchase.
Objection. Response is based on
Alright.
hearsay.
Is this not gonna be a hearsay?
I can just admonish my witness not to go into any kind of hearsay, Judge. But I can ask a specific question if you want.
Is this, he said he had a problem. Is it relevant to this case?
Well, his character is relevant to this case, and that's the question that I asked. I asked, tell me about a time when Josh has showed his character to you. And that's what she's explaining, Judge.
Well, get her to testify about that. If it doesn't involve hearsay.
May I take the witness on board, sir?
Around this character issue.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, go forward.
So, ma'am, the incident that you're about to describe for Mr. Merleader, how do you know about that incident?
I helped Josh help the friend of his get the groceries that he was trying to help him get.
Were you present?
It was all over the phone, ma'am, because it was during COVID.
So if it was over the phone, Judge, it was necessarily a conversation. So any response would be based on hearsay.
I'll withdraw the question, Judge.
All right.
Ma'am, during your time that you've observed, so we're not going to talk about that incident.
Okay.
During the time that you've been with Josh, how do you personally describe his character to you?
He's very caring, very loving, very patient. My daughter's not always the easiest, and he is very patient with her and brings out that positive aspect of her.
Do you think that he's a trustworthy person?
Yes, sir.
Do you think that in your time that you've dealt with him, Has he been abusive or, both verbally or physical?
Absolutely not.
Does he do any drugs?
No, sir.
Is he a hardworking individual?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what Joshua has accomplished in his professional career and what his aspirations are?
He has a,
Objection calls for response based on hearsay.
Judge, she can testify to what she has personal knowledge about.
But the only way she would know his aspirations is if he told her.
I'm gonna agree with the state on that, so I'll rule in her favor.
Do you know what personal accomplishments Joshua has had?
I believe he has an associate's degree in college. Yes, sir.
And where did he go to college?
Tyler Junior College.
Were you aware of this case prior to Josh explaining it to you?
No, sir.
Do you know anybody on Joshua's side of the family, or does he have any contact with them?
I have met no one from Joshua's side of the family. No, sir. I do know they went to his sister's graduation.
And were any of them invited to the wedding?
They were.
Did they attend?
They were not able to.
How has Joshua being in your family impacted you, and how has it impacted Dakota, according to what you witnessed?
It is he's completed our family. Like I said, Dakota has anxiety and he calms her. He has a very calming effect for her. We've just learned as a family that we have to support each other even more than we did before.
And, I've explained to you what we're facing here is what's called a third-degree felony, where the judge can sentence us from 2 to 10 years, but he also has the option to keep us on probation, deferred, and extend us, or he can convict us, or he can do nothing.
Yes.
What are you asking the court to do?
I think I would ask the court to continue his deferred, maybe extend his deferred probation at this time.
Why are you asking the court to do that?
I believe in the criminal justice system. Obviously, we're here because Josh did not follow through like he was supposed to. But I feel like now he has the support that he needs as a family. And we're here to help him and to support him through this process and to help offer any encouragement we can to make sure he does and follows through as he should.
Right. And you're not here to make excuses for Josh. Right?
Absolutely not.
And, you heard that he has pleaded true to every one of these allegations, and he's pleaded guilty and accepted probation, right? You're not asking the judge to do anything that you believe is unfair, correct?
No, sir.
If Joshua was convicted, how do you think that would hurt Joshua?
If he was convicted of the felony.
Yes.
Oh, wow. If you know somebody that's been convicted of a felony, it affects their whole life. It affects everything they do from that day moving forward. It affects their ability to seek employment. It affects their ability to find housing and support their family.
How would it affect your family?
I'll have to take on and help my daughter support herself because it could eventually affect her as well.
Would you characterize your daughter or Joshua rich by any means?
Oh, Lord, no.
What does your daughter do for a living?
She's an elementary PE school coach.
And Joshua is currently working at a mattress firm?
Correct. Yes, sir.
How would jail time affect Joshua?
He would lose his job, which would.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for response based on hearsay. She doesn't know whether he would lose his, she has no firsthand knowledge of whether he would lose his job or not.
All right, I'll sustain that objection.
How would jail time affect you and your family, ma'am?
It would affect me in that I would have to kind of help my daughter financially to get through while he's gone and she does not have his income. I personally do not have extra funds laying around to help support and maintain 2 households. So it would put a financial burden on my family as well. And the emotional support from my daughter.
When you learned of the restitution in this case, Did you contact your father in order to talk about that?
I did not actually. I contacted my dad to just ask him to come be a character witness and to be here for support during that initial court date.
But you didn't ask your father to pay any restitution? Is that
Not a
right?
dime, no, sir.
Okay, and Joshua did not approach you to pay restitution, is that
No,
right?
sir, he did not.
Didn't borrow any money from you, right?
No, sir, he did not.
Neither did Dakota.
No, sir.
Ma'am, do you know if Joshua and Dakota plan on having children?
Yes, sir, they do.
Objection, relevance.
I don't see the relevance.
No further questions, Judge. I'll pass the witness.
Any cross from the state?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Thank you. Ma'am, when did you say that Joshua and your daughter were married?
June the 1st of 2021. Right,
Where
yeah.
did that wedding take place?
It, so Fulmer, I think is the name of it, in Tyler.
In Tyler?
Yes, ma'am.
And when did you say that you first met Josh?
It was around the beginning of 2018, I believe.
So less than 6 months after he had been placed on probation in this case.
I can't give you a definite date as to when I met him, so I don't know that it was less or more than 6 months.
Okay. Well, you agree that he was placed on probation in September of 2017?
Yes, ma'am, I'm not, yes, ma'am.
And when did you become aware that he was on probation?
April of whatever day he was arrested at Ms. Griffin's office.
So he never told you,
No, ma'am.
but he's a trustworthy person.
Yes, ma'am.
He stole $24,000 from a school district and absconded on paying it back or doing any of the punishment that was ordered to him. Didn't tell you, his future mother-in-law, that he was even on probation, and he's a trustworthy person.
Judge, Your Honor, calls for just a compound question that's just confusing. You just ask her a simple question, yes or no.
All right, she said she didn't know he was on probation. Well, I have that in evidence.
But you consider him a trustworthy person?
Yes, ma'am.
despite
Asked
all
and
that.
answered, Judge. Objection.
And he told you he has an associate's degree?
He did not. I assume that he has an associate's degree.
What made you assume that?
I know he went to school at TJC and played basketball.
Did he tell you that?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you be surprised to know that he was never on the TJC basketball team?
Objection,
Another
Your Honor.
lie?
Calls for a question from facts that are not in evidence or in the record.
Well, this is cross-examination.
Judge, she's asking a question that's based on hearsay that's not in the record.
Well,
And it's
he's,
have you would be
he's
surprised.
cross-examining the witness. I'm gonna give her some leeway.
So did he tell you?
No, ma'am, he
played
did not.
basketball
No,
at
ma'am, he
TJC?
did not.
Who told you that?
I just assumed. He told me he had played basketball in high school. And he's a huge basketball fan, so I assumed that he played basketball.
Oh, so what you said just a minute ago wasn't right, when you said that he told you that he played basketball at TJC.
I'm sorry, you've got me very confused.
Okay. Well, I'm a huge basketball fan and I went to Texas Tech. So are you going to assume I played basketball for Texas
No,
Tech?
ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor. This line of questioning just seems to be hostile from Ms. Curry.
All right, I've heard enough on it. Next question.
So you've answered the question both ways. I'm going to ask it one more time, see what you say. Did he tell you that he played basketball at TJC?
I do not recall him telling me he played basketball at TJC. No, ma'am.
And you believe in the criminal justice system?
Yes, ma'am, 100%.
So the criminal justice system decided, and Mr. Gamble agreed, that the appropriate punishment for him was 5 years of probation, where he was supposed to report to a probation officer, pay a fine, pay supervision fees, do community service to pay back the community. And for let's see, from September of 2017 through April of 2021, he did not one single thing.
Objection, Your Honor. Compound question and ask for a legal conclusion. She's not here to testify about what probation terms that Mr. Gamble was in.
I didn't ask her that. That's already in evidence. I'm asking her what, if she believes in the criminal justice system. I didn't even get to finish my question. Would you say that punishment worked?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation. And now again, a legal conclusion.
All right, I'm going to sustain it.
Why does having 2 dogs mean that a person should get less punishment?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
That's my
And-
point.
And she never said anything like that. What is the relevance of this question?
What is the relevance of a picture of 2 dogs?
You can ask that question.
Okay, what's the relevance to what this judge has to decide to a picture of 2 dogs?
Well,
Judge,
I,
I'm going to object to legal conclusion.
all right, I don't care what her opinion is of the criminal justice system. Ask her about some facts.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness, Judge.
No questions, Judge.
All right, ma'am, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Step down. Your next witness, counsel.
Your Honor, the defense calls Mr. Kevin Sheehan.
Sir, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Better get a little closer.
Good morning, Mr. Sheehan. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name, sir?
Kevin Patrick Sheehan, Sheehan.
And sir, are you currently occupied are you currently employed with anything?
Yes, sir.
What is your employment and what is your occupation?
My occupation is in sales, Saddle White Log Homes, for 36 years.
And where do you currently work and how long have you worked there?
At Saddle White Log Homes, I'm sorry, for 36 years.
Okay, so where's that located, sir?
Longview, Texas.
What is your relation to Joshua Gamble?
He's my grandson.
How long have you known Joshua?
Josh became you might say a member of our family about, I'd say 3.5 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And how did you meet Joshua?
Dakota brought him over to the house one time to meet myself and her grandmother.
And you were there present for the wedding of Joshua and Dakota, is that right?
Wouldn't have missed it for the world.
Can you talk about the family support that you and your family support for Joshua?
Josh came into our world and Shelly, not Dakota, excuse me, Shelly, my daughter, gave us a little bit of information about, some of the things in his life and that he had not experienced some of the things that our family has.
And what kind of family support do you all provide for Joshua?
He's my grandson. He's not my grandson-in-law.
So it feels that he is blood.
He's as close as can be.
Tell me about a time that you believe Joshua showed his character to you.
As my daughter stated earlier, our granddaughter is a very strong souled person. And there's been some times where she needed some support. And Josh he stepped up to the plate. He is, he's kind. He's loving. He is, he's not arrogant. He's not mean. He has shown nothing but love for my granddaughter and our family. And we have shown that in return because that's what he needs in his world.
Do you know of any of his professional accomplishments?
As of today, I know that Josh said, I knew he had attended college. I did not know where because I haven't asked. It's one of those things that Josh doesn't talk a lot. And so if you don't ask him specific, you don't get that information. It's just because it's his upbringing. He's pretty much raised himself. I know that as of today that he's got the associate's degree, I assume, at the college. And past that, just being a good person and fundamentally strong, he has shown me in no way, shape, or form that he is anything other than a good man.
Has he mistreated your daughter or granddaughter in any way?
Absolutely not.
Would you say that he's a loyal and trustworthy person in your family?
I want him on my side. I want him on my team.
Were you aware of, I'm going to talk about this case particularly, Mr. Sheehan. Were you aware of this case prior to, a few months ago?
I found out that Josh had a situation the night before the hearing was set, and if I might be corrected, it was October 14th of this year that he had a hearing set that I was asked to attend as a family support member.
And walk me through the restitution. How did you learn about that? Was it something you just had laying around, and talk about that?
Well, Shelley had called me and asked me if I would come attend. And I said, sure. And I said, ask her what was going on. And she explained to me the best she could some of the details. And I said, okay. So I said, is there anything I can do? She says, I really don't know, Dad. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just asking you if you can come. And I said, well, what's her attorney's name? And I got your name and your phone number. And I contacted you, and we had a brief conversation. And I think if I recall it correctly, I said, okay, what do we need to do? And you said there was a financial obligation that needed to be met if possible. And I said, okay, so what was that number? And you shared a number with me that I'm going to say is approximately $25,000. And of course, my response to that inside my heart was, dang, okay. So at that point, I made a decision. Let's do it. I have, and my wife and I have a life savings. And we got married at 17 and she was 16. And we've been that way for 46 years. We're not rich. We've worked every day. I shared a little bit of this story with a friend because I had 24 hours. Actually, I had 12 hours to come up with $25,000, which is basically impossible at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I had a friend that says, I'll give it to you. I'll loan it to you. They wrote me a check. I couldn't use the check simply to pay the court system. I had to go through the process. Well, during that process, I talked to the gentleman that handles my financial savings, and he advised me that if I had some other means of covering that, to consider that, because the penalty that I would pay by withdrawing from a 401k account would be a substantial amount of tax. And thank you, ma'am. I'm an emotional person. The after effect of that money being taken out of my account would potentially have a much larger effect than just that money. The taxes would have been substantial, probably, and I'm just guessing, $10,000-15,000 that I'd had to pay come this January, this April. I would have lost the income from using that. So he asked me, he said, Kevin, do you have any other means of coming up with those funds? And I never really thought about going to the bank because I didn't have that kind of time, or I didn't think I had that time. And so we proceeded and we came to the court hearing with that check, knowing that we were trying to get those funds into a cashier's check. And then, and I'm kind of jumping back and forth a little bit, I'm not meaning to, but when we came to court that day, we were granted an extension, which gave me more of an opportunity to look at my possibilities. And so at that point, I came to the conclusion, and none of this is with any conversation with my wife. This is all me. No one asked. No one asked me to do anything. I did it because it's what was needed to be done, and it was the right thing to do. So I thought collateral. So I took some collateral that I had, and I approached the bank with it, and they agreed to loan me the money that I needed to cover my needs. And so we proceeded forth with that, and I made a loan, a 5-year loan at a 6% interest. And my intentions are and will be that Josh will make those payments. That is his responsibility, not Dakota's, not mine. The court give him that opportunity to do that. I feel very confident that he'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. And if he doesn't, if the court doesn't give him that opportunity, then I will have done what I still think I needed to do to support my grandson and my granddaughter.
When you made this payment, did you give it to Josh and your daughter who then paid probation?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. I wear hearing aids and I didn't hear you clearly.
I'm sorry, I'll talk loudly. So when you gave this payment, you gave it to Josh and his your granddaughter, is that right?
That's correct. I gave them a cashier's check sitting at Spring Hill Bank parking lot and told them to go take care of it.
And as far as you know, they went straight to probation and paid, right?
Yes, sir.
You told, you testified just now that nobody asked you to make this payment.
No one.
Why would you make this payment?
I love my grandson. I love my granddaughter. And it needed to be done. It was the right thing to do. And sometimes you have to give people a direction by your actions. And the right thing to do is to try and take care of your obligations. And sometimes we fail. Sometimes we don't take care of them in a timely manner, but don't just not do it. When you have that opportunity and you get a chance and you get a second chance or a third, you do what you can do as best you can. And I was the only one in this family, me and my wife, the only one in this family that could do that, was in that position financially to be able to help them.
Without anybody asking you, you took it upon yourself to basically drop almost $25,000 in the financial obligation that Joshua was owed. Is that right?
That is correct, and I'd do it again. That's a good man right there.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you witnessed with Joshua's family and how he affects your granddaughter, how he affects your family?
Josh is the best thing that could ever happen to Dakota.
Why do you say that, sir?
I'm sorry?
Why do you say that, sir?
Because I've seen the transition in her life when he became part of her life. I've seen the transition for them becoming a couple, her becoming stronger, more I'm trying to think of the right word to use, I'm sorry, confident in herself, that she has got that direction. She has a calm about her now that she didn't have before.
No, like I told Ms. Hawk earlier, we're facing what's called a third-degree felony. And the judge has multiple options here. What are you asking the court to do?
I would ask this court to do anything short of a conviction and a felony on his record, an extension of probation, maybe some additional terms to his probation, but to keep the deferred probation in place, to give him an opportunity, which I know he's had an opportunity, ma'am, but to give him a continued opportunity to finish his probation and become what he already is a good tax-paying citizen that contributes to our country, our state, and our county. He is not a burden to the state, and I don't want him to become a burden to the state.
How would a felony conviction hurt your family?
It would be devastating
Why do you say that, sir?
because I had an older brother.
Can you tell me about your brother?
Objection, relevance.
It was asked and answered, but I understand the consequences of a felony conviction.
I'll move on, Judge.
Thank you.
We talked about this a little bit. You said that you paid this restitution back, but has Joshua made any payments yet, or have you asked Joshua to make any payments yet?
I haven't even discussed it. And the reason why I hadn't is there was enough emotion with the proceedings that were going to take place that I wanted to get those behind us before that was ever put on the tape. But there's no doubt in my mind, given that opportunity, this young man is going to take care of his responsibility to his grandfather.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. I'll pass the witness.
Thank you, Judge. But sir, well, let me start with this. I appreciate you paying the restitution, and I'm sure the taxpayers of Van School District appreciate you paying the restitution. But Mr. Gamble over here knew on October 15th that you took out a loan for $25,000 to make that payment for him in hopes that it keeps him out of prison, right?
Objection, Your Honor. It calls for speculation.
You said he handed him the check.
Your Honor, the question she asked is in hopes that it keeps him out of prison. How could he possibly know what Gavin was thinking?
I'm sorry, Judge, I'll withdraw that part of the question. He knew on October 15th that you took out a loan at a bank for $25,000 so the restitution could be paid. Is that right?
No, ma'am. They knew nothing about it at all until after we had actually come to court. They knew that I had a check that had been loaned to me by a personal friend. And that's what it was. It was a personal friend that knew me, that had access to those funds that they could get immediately. And then I started a process. I've never asked these kids for anything as far as payment. I've never told them it was a responsibility until right now.
Okay. But my point is, you said that they met you at the parking lot of the Spring Hill Bank.
Correct.
You gave them the check.
Because I had to return to work, and it was the needs of the court for that money to be here that day as best could be suited. That was the day that it was supposed to be here, and we made that happen.
Right.
We made that happen.
And maybe I misunderstood. I'm sorry if I did.
That's okay.
So you got a check from a friend,
Correct.
but then you didn't use that.
No, I did. I borrowed the money from the bank afterwards.
Okay. So with the money that you gave to Josh, to Mr. Gamble, to pay the restitution, Was that before or after you got the loan from the bank?
That was before.
So when did you get the loan from the bank?
After I had talked to the gentleman that runs my
Uh-huh.
savings, and he and I had several conversations over a day or so period over the weekend. This is a personal friend and advisor. And I mentioned to him about,
That's okay. I just, as long as.
okay, so it was later the next week when I started the process. I think our court hearing was on a Thursday, and
Right.
it was Monday or Tuesday that I started that process. And then I was able to supply the bank the paperwork they needed to put the loan in place.
Okay, I did misunderstand. I'm sorry. So, but the money you got from the friend originally, so that's the money that was actually physically turned into a cashier's check and given to Mr. Gamble to take to the probation department.
That is correct.
But you were gonna have to pay that money back too, right?
I don't understand your
Were you
question.
gonna have to pay your friend back?
Absolutely.
Okay,
It was not a gift.
right.
There's no gifts in this picture at all.
Right. And so whether it was a loan from a friend or a loan from a bank, has Mr. Gamble over there paid you $1 towards it yet?
He didn't even know about it as far as me getting a loan from a bank until my wife discussed it with my daughter. My wife and I have had a hell of an argument over this situation because I chose not to discuss this with my granddaughter and my grandson until this hearing was set and done.
But
It wasn't relevant.
But the loan from your friend had to be paid back.
I paid that back with the money from the bank that week. As soon as I got that check, it went immediately back into their savings account.
Regardless of where the money came from. Mr. Gamble has not offered you $1 of that 25,000 back yet.
Mr. Gamble made a comment to me that I'll keep to myself about this situation.
Because he doesn't feel like he did very much wrong.
Objection, Your Honor.
No, you are absolutely wrong.
Knowledge.
That is not correct.
So
Hold on, Mr. Sheehan.
I'll withdraw it, Your Honor. That's fine.
Ask a different question.
Thank you, Judge. You met Mr. Gamble 3.5 years ago when your granddaughter brought him to y'all's house, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But you didn't know that he had been put on probation for stealing 24,000 something dollars
Objection, Your Honor.
until,
She's adding sidebar to her question. He doesn't know what he did and didn't do. Right? He just was told what about his probation. She can ask that question, Your Honor.
you didn't know that Mr. Gamble was on probation for theft of $25,000 until October the 13th of 2021.
I didn't know Josh was on charges of theft until after the hearing here on the 14th or 13th, whatever it was, and I didn't care. All I knew is that he needed some help. My judge of his character has been based on the 3.5 years that he's been in our family, and it is nothing but outstanding, period. You can roll your eyes up you want, ma'am. You've never been around this young man, and I have. You're making your judgments on what you know, and I respect that. But you haven't known him on a personal relationship and what he's contributed to our family.
So how does what you know line up with somebody who says, yeah, Judge, you put me on probation, but I don't need to go?
Objection, Your Honor. It calls for speculation.
All right.
Relevance to this question.
I'm going to sustain that.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. No further questions.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for coming today. You may be seated. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Judge, my last witness is Mr. Gamble's wife. I can make that brief.
All right.
Ms. Dakota Gamble.
Ma'am, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Good morning, Ms. Gamble. Can I please call you Dakota? Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Please state your full name and spell your first name for the record.
It's Dakota Nicole Gamble, Dakotah.
And what is your occupation, ma'am?
I'm an elementary PE teacher
Where is that, ma'am?
at Cumberland Academy in Smith County, Tyler.
How long have you worked there?
A year and a half or so. This will be my second year teaching.
What kind of work do you do over there?
I teach physical education to second grade through fifth grade students.
What is your relation to Joshua, ma'am?
He's my husband.
How long have you known Joshua?
In January, it will be 4 years.
How did you meet with Joshua?
Through social media, but we had mutual friends who knew each other prior.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
May I have defense exhibits 1 to 8, please? Ma'am, I'm just going to show you these pictures and I'm going to ask you to explain a little bit about these pictures. Can you talk about what defense exhibit 1 is?
These are our two dogs. We rescued the one of them when we started dating not long after, and then the other one I had prior to us meeting.
What is this picture of, ma'am?
This is our family, our whole family. My mom and dad's side of the family. Well, my family's family wasn't able to attend at our wedding.
What is this picture of, ma'am?
These are my grandparents, my grandfather, that's my grandmother.
Defense exhibit 4, what's that?
My mom, my dad, my sister, who do everything they can for us.
Defense exhibit 5.
My favorite picture from our wedding. This just shows like how happy and playful our relationship is, and you know, you can see I'm really happy to have him.
Defense exhibit 6.
Another photo from our wedding.
7.
When it snowed, luckily we never lost power, but we were able to take our dogs and in the snow, and brought up the fact that maybe one day we want to move where they can have snow to play in all the time. This is Josh's sister. He only has 2, and they're the only family that he has at all.
And talk to you about Josh's character. Can you tell me about a time that Josh showed his character to you, ma'am?
So several months ago, we discovered that there was a stray kitten that lived in our apartment complex. And this cat, it was super cute, and I wanted to try and save it. And despite the fact that we did not need another animal or did not need to bring another animal into our house, he encouraged me to save the kitten, and did everything he could to help me, so far as to going outside in the heat with the mosquitoes and bugs, crawling on the ground to try and save this cat that had been outside with no food, not really any shelter, and just doing what he can to help me, because that's how he is as a person. He does anything that he can to help other people. During COVID, we had a friend who lost his job and didn't have money for food or rent, and the friend contacted Josh, and it let him know that he was struggling, and out of the kindness of Josh's heart, he offered to buy groceries for him. So we, through the Walmart app, gave him our login and Josh's credit card information, and
He was able to buy groceries to feed him and his mom for several weeks. And even after the friend had added some things to the cart, he went in and like doubled all of the things that he bought to make sure that he had enough to feed himself and his mom for an extended period of time.
Would you say that Josh is a kind person?
The kindest.
Would you say that, I'll ask this, has he ever abused you verbally or physically?
No,
Has he done drugs?
no, sir.
How has Josh impacted your family?
He made me feel whole. I struggled with my mental health for a really long time.
Go ahead.
I struggled, sorry.
All right, go ahead.
I struggled with my mental health for a very long time in college. And when we first started dating, he was very supportive of me, getting help for that. And he has done nothing but support me and help me and do everything that he can to be on my team since the day that we met.
What are you asking the court to do today?
I would ask the court to keep him on probation, to extend his probation, so that we're able to, complete the financial responsibilities. If that means, we're extending or adding to the amount of community service hours he has to do, additional reporting once a week or every other week, whatever it takes, but just not to convict him of a felony or send him to jail for an extended period of time.
You heard your grandfather talk today about how he obtained the restitution in this case. That is a great sacrifice that he made for not only you, but for Joshua. Can you talk about how you're planning to possibly pay him back?
As soon as we kind of get through what we have now, obviously, we have to find out what happens today. And then as soon as we have a plan for his legal situation, then we will, see and discuss with him the manner in which we're going to pay that back. But it will be paid back. Even if he hadn't asked, it would have been paid back.
Ma'am, can you tell me how it would personally affect you and your family if Josh was sent to jail?
It would be devastating for me. I think most people, have a spouse or a loved one that they care about. And I can't imagine going home every day and not, going home to my husband. The emotional toll itself would be catastrophic. And then in addition to the fact that I'm a teacher at a Title I charter school that does not pay well. So financially, I can't support myself. It would affect me that way. My parents would have to contribute and they can't. And so it would be very, very devastating.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thanks.
I'll pass the witness.
Mrs. Gamble, you said you met Mr. Gamble in 4 years ago, or it would be 4 years in January. My math's right, that means you met in January of 2018?
Yes, ma'am. Late January, late January at some point.
And did he tell you that he was on probation?
Over a period of time, I learned parts. That wasn't really anything that we ever discussed. It wasn't something that I ever really asked or was discussed. I don't think that,
Was there a time that his probation officer called you and told you that he needed to be reporting to her?
yes, earlier.
Calls for hearsay.
That would be hearsay, I think. You can ask her what she knows.
And at that point, you believed that Mr. Gamble's probation was over.
I wasn't sure on the terms of his probation. I did not know.
Did he tell you his probation was over and had been taken care of?
I can't answer that for sure.
You told her that his probation was over and taken care of.
I told her what I had assumed, but I did not know for sure. At no point did I know exactly what had happened until his arrest earlier this year.
Did you think it odd that he wasn't reporting to a probation officer?
I did not know that he was on probation.
Oh, so he didn't tell you.
I was unaware of the exact stipulations of the situation. So no, I did not know.
What he did tell you, if you were unaware of the exact stipulations, I understand that. Did he tell you what the offense was?
I'm not sure if he told me or if I found out on my own account.
Well, how would you have found out on your own account?
It's public record.
Where would you have looked that up?
A simple Google search would do it.
Did you do that? A Google search?
I'm sure at one point.
And what did you
I mean,
find
I don't
out?
remember exactly when that happened.
What did you find out?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. She's asking about Google searches now. Object to relevancy and hearsay.
All right, I'm gonna sustain that objection.
When did you and Joshua begin living together?
At some point, mid to late 2018. At that point, he moved in with me because he had lost his job.
And was that in Tyler or Longview?
Tyler.
And what was the next job that he got after he moved in with you?
He worked at Denver Mattress for a couple of months. And then after that at Mattress Firm.
And what was his salary at Mattress Firm?
It's a commission-based job, so I can't say for sure. And we weren't married at the time, so I don't have access to his tax information on his actual salary.
Well,
At that time, I was also still in college, working as a waiter at a restaurant.
and what is your current salary at Cumberland?
$41,000 a year before taxes and insurance.
And what is Josh's salary at the mattress store?
I can't say for sure. It's the same. It's a commission-based, so it varies.
And what's the average?
I wouldn't know off the top of my head. I would have to go back and look at our bank account.
What's the lowest check he's ever gotten?
$600-ish for a month.
And what's the highest check he's ever gotten?
I can't say for sure
Why not?
because I don't know.
Ballpark it for me.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
I mean, there's no way for me to know.
All right, I'm gonna sustain that objection.
Do you have a joint bank account with him?
Yes, ma'am.
But regardless, he had enough money to buy groceries for a friend.
That actually also put us in a financial bind where we had to, it put us in a spot where we had little to no money left as well, but it was
When was
the right
that
thing
about?
to do. It was during COVID, not long after COVID had started. I was
So it
not working.
during the time he was supposed to be paying probation and restitution.
I would assume so.
What kind of car does Josh drive?
He drives my old vehicle that's owned by my parents.
That's not what I asked, ma'am. I asked what kind of car does Josh drive?
It's a Hyundai Elantra,
What year?
2014.
Paid for?
Yes, ma'am. I paid it off while I was in college.
What kind of car do you drive?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not paid for. My parents refinanced it several months ago.
And what's the monthly payment on it?
$170 a month.
Is he current on those payments?
Yes, ma'am.
Does he have to make a payment?
I'm sorry. Are you asking if we have to make a payment on a loan to the bank?
I'm asking if you have to make a payment on it. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
And who does that payment go to?
my mother.
Has he paid it every month?
Yes.
What kind of car do you drive?
I drive a Jeep Compass,
What year?
2018.
Paid for?
No, ma'am.
What's your car payment?
$410 a month,
What's your rent payment?
$1,000 a month. I,
500 cover it?
are you including like car insurance?
Just electric, gas, water, whatever you have, internet, whatever you have to pay at the,
I don't know for sure. I mean, I don't keep like a running log every month of, I just have a list of bills and I check them off.
y'all taking any trips together?
No, ma'am, we have not.
You've never been out of the state of Texas with Josh?
Not that I can recall.
It's the furthest you've ever been away from Smith County with Josh?
With Josh, we visited his sister when she graduated high school. Other than that, it's probably the farthest. I think Round Rock is where she's from.
You have a honeymoon?
No, ma'am, we did not.
You originally had a wedding planned in Colorado, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, we did. I'm sorry,
Where at?
Boulder. My parents were paying for our wedding.
How would you feel if you found out that one of your fellow teachers at Cumberland Academy had lied to get their job?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance and speculation.
Yeah, I'll sustain that.
I'll pass the witness section.
If we have no further questions.
All right, ma'am, thank you very much. You may step down. All right, additional witnesses.
Your Honor, the defense rests.
All right, any additional witnesses from the state?
No, Your Honor.
All right, I've got a few documents that I have to read, but I'm gonna go ahead and hear argument at this time. And then I'm gonna take probably a 15-minute recess to consider my decision. State may go first in argument.
We'll reserve ours for rebuttal.
All right, counsel?
May it please the court, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Counsels for the state. Your Honor, what we're asking for the court to do is keep Josh on deferred probation. You heard from the testimony of Judge Chris Martin, and near the end of his testimony, I will point out what he was most concerned about. And if I was a district attorney, this is what I would be most concerned about too. Whether the restitution for the victims was paid, have the victims of a criminal offense made whole. Up to that point, when you made that phone call, they had not been made whole. And the whole point of this probation, the whole point of this theft, 5 years deferred, was to make sure that the victims were made whole. Now, I submit to the court that in the eyes of the law, it doesn't matter where that restitution payment came from. Here it came from my client's grandfather-in-law and his family. My client paid that restitution in full. He has fulfilled the obligation that was initially set out in the probation. You also heard testimony, Judge, of each one of his family members and how much he has impacted them. Now, we're not here to make any excuses about the 3.5 years that we've absconded from probation, right? That looks bad in and itself. What I can tell you, Judge, is that he was not off committing crimes. He wasn't abusing anybody. He wasn't hurting anybody. He absconded. When he came back, we heard from Ms. Daniel Griffith that he's pretty much been a perfect probationee. Reported, had no violations. Drug tests are clean. What the state is going to ask you to do, Judge, is cruelty. They want you to be cruel here and not extend him on probation, convict him, possibly sentence him to prison, or convict him and sentence him for the full period of probation. A felony conviction for Joshua, and you have heard no evidence of any prior criminal record. Nothing. A criminal conviction for him would be not only devastating for him, obviously, but for the rest of his family. He has an obligation to pay back the $24,000 plus that Kevin Sheehan had borrowed to do that restitution. That amount with interest and tax issues is going to be well over $30,000. That's how much Josh is going to have the obligation to pay Kevin Sheehan, who's currently working. Your Honor, we would take on any probation modification that the court wants to do, but we beg the court for mercy here. Mercy is never earned. Mercy is given when the time is appropriate. In this instance, we're asking the court for mercy and to keep him on probation for deferred, allow him to finish off the full amount of deferred, which is, extend him the full time for 10 years. Ask for him to be put on intensive supervision for a full year, which is weekly reporting. You could increase the amount of community service required. But what kind of a lesson are we actually trying to teach here? What is the punishment that fits the 3.5 years of absconding and then coming back and paying the restitution in full a full year before it was actually completely due? Judge, I submit to you that we've done what we needed to do on probation. And ultimately, I'll rest on the words of Judge Martin, who said that it mattered to him the restitution. It mattered to him that he gave Joshua the chance to do the right thing. And after he got off the phone with him, Ms. Griffith was the one who arrested him on that meeting and the appointment. He turned himself into probation. Josh has done the right thing, albeit late. He's done the right thing and he's trying to do the right thing now and to show the court that he can actually complete the deferred probation in full. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel.
We've done enough on probation. They've done one thing on probation. Actually, Josh Gamble didn't do it. His grandfather stepped up and did it for him. He has done exactly nothing on probation until he was caught again. Oh, and counsel calls him the perfect probationer since April? No, he's done no community service. It doesn't cost any money to do community service. You show up, you do something. He likes animals. You go out to the pound, you go to the SPCA. No, this man, Your Honor, is the personification and embodiment of the movie Catch Me If You Can. He has done nothing except repeatedly disrespect our law, disrespect society, and disrespect the community, the criminal justice system. He shows up at a small rural school district and says, I went to TJC, I got a degree.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for facts that are not in
It's
evidence.
in State's Exhibit 1 that this court has in evidence. He shows up at Van School District, represents that he has a degree from TJC that he doesn't have. He attended for 10 months. He never played basketball. He represents that he played basketball. He's on the basketball team, wants to coach for Van. Represents that he has a degree from the University of Tyler where he never once set foot as a student, not one day. And he teaches, and he takes their money and puts it in his pocket and spends it, and has excuse after excuse after excuse about why he can't produce his diplomas. And finally, just like Catch Me If You Can, they draw the line and say, you know what, today you're not working. You're going to get a copy of that diploma. And oops, the gig's up. He gets charged. He begs, writes personal emails to the district attorney about what a good person he is, and begs for this chance to show that he's a good person. Just give me probation. Just give me probation. Just give me probation. He got his probation. And you know what? They want to blame a bad lawyer. Yeah, the lawyer got disbarred. Whoop-de-doo. That doesn't have anything to do with the decisions that Joshua Gamble made the day the judge put him on probation and told him in the last line of those probation conditions why she was putting him on probation. Right above where he signed his name, she told him it was because she believed his attitude and conduct would improve, and that he would be, and that probation would be beneficial to him and to this community. Wrong. He walks across the street, he checks in, he gets the transfer to Longview set up and leaves for 4.5 years. He begged for the opportunity for probation. You know why? So that he could do just that, so that he could leave. And once again, play his catch me if you can game. He gets letters to go report in Longview. He doesn't do it. He gets phone calls from Miss Griffith. He doesn't come in. Nothing. Not one thing except a big, big thumb to the nose disrespect for the entire criminal justice system. He has never, ever been held accountable for his actions. And now it's incumbent upon this court to hold him accountable for stealing $24,000 from the taxpayers in Van, Texas. And by the way, when you rob the bank and give the money back, or have somebody give the money back for you, you still get held accountable. And we're not asking for cruelty. It is offensive that that man would stand here and say that what we're asking for is cruelty. We are asking for accountability for the very first time. Accountability for stealing $24,000 from the taxpayers of Van, Texas, and accountability for standing here in front of a district court judge, Teresa Drum, taking the grace and the mercy that the district attorney gave, taking the grace and the mercy that the district judge gave, and thumbing his nose at it and never doing one thing. That does not deserve deferred adjudication. That deserves a felony conviction. In my mind, that deserves seeing the inside of TDC, because maybe that will teach him the lesson. There is no condition of probation that this court can put on him that has the ability to teach him any more than the conditions that were already put on, or to hold him accountable any more than the conditions that were already put on. And I know it will hurt the family. This court doesn't know me. I was a defense lawyer for 15 years. I've been a prosecutor for about the same amount of time. It's always, Judge, it's always the families that suffer more when somebody has to get locked up, whether it's in county jail, whether it's in TDC, it is always the families that suffer more. But that doesn't mean we can let the catch me if you can thief go without being held accountable. And the only way, Your Honor, the only way to hold him accountable, he's proven to us, the only way to hold him accountable is to lock him up. Lock him up in TDC, lock him up in a county jail, give him that felony conviction because he has asked for it.
Thank you. All right, this court is going to take a 10-minute recess. The clock in the back says 12:20. I'm going to come back on the bench at 12:30. I want to go through the evidence again, the exhibits that I have, as well as the evidence that I've heard, and I'm going to make a decision at that time. We're in recess till 12:30. All rise. Please be seated. All right, I want to commend both attorneys in this matter. Both sides did an excellent job. Mr. Gamel, y'all can stay seated till I get to the last part. Mr. Gamel, you committed a crime. You lied to get a teaching, coaching job at the Van Independent School District. You begged for a second chance. You said you were a good person and a trustworthy person, that this was an exception in your life. The district attorney recommended that you get a deferred probation, and the judge agreed as well. And they gave you a second chance on September the 12th, 2017. You were placed on a deferred probation in a situation where if you worked your way out, you could have had this charge dismissed and sealed if you complied with the terms and conditions of your probation. The best outcome for you. You could have worked your way out of this. Now, you're very lucky to have married into a good family who cares about you and supports you. I have to base my decision in this case not on their love and concern for you, but on your choices. You were placed on probation, and I have to sentence you not because of them, but because of your own actions. You begged for a second chance, and then you said, I was just kidding about that. I'm not going to comply with the terms and conditions of probation. All right, you may stand at this time. The court is going to adjudicate or revoke your probation. I am going to find you guilty of theft, felony grade 3. I'm going to sentence you to 3 years in the institution division. I'm going to ask that Mr. Gamel be taken into custody at this time. And we're going to do formal sentencing as soon as we can have a judgment. I'm going to be here this afternoon.
Yes, Judge, we can do it this afternoon. We'll have a judgment ready.
All right. Mr. Gamel, you'll have to go into custody at this time. This court's in recess.
Your Honor, we have one more thing to put on the record. At this time, we're requesting, I'm going to request an appeal be made in this record. And we ask the court to set an appeal bond for Mr. Gamel. And Your Honor, we're asking.
All right, I will set that. Well, be seated. All right, you may be seated. I'm going to note on the record that Mr. Gamel has advised the court that he's going to appeal the decision of this court. I'm going to set, yes.
Judge, he waived appeal at the time of the original plea. I can get a certified copy of that for the court.
Not for the revocation, Your Honor. He's not waived his right to an appeal for a revocation.
It's a waiver for all purposes.
No, it's not.
All right, what I'm going to do then, when we do the formal sentencing, I'll let both counsel argue that point, and maybe there's some case law on that. All right, we're going to be in recess until we do the sentencing, which will be sometime this afternoon.
Judge, may I just ask the court to acknowledge the fact that this is not a plea bargain case, right? We did not waive any right to appeal on the revocation.
It was a plea bargain case at the time of the plea, and appeal was waived.
All right, well, I'm going to have to look at some case law. If you can find some law on that point, please. So, all right, we're in recess until, a judgment is prepared sometime this afternoon.